last time Joe and I did a talk together, our presentations were like very, very similar, almost identical. So we will have some overlap here, but take it as a complementary overlap, not necessarily doing the same thing. Because the more times you hear something, I think the more times, the deeper it's going to get in there. So real quickly, mission statement of my ranch. I ranch up by Westlock, Alberta. Economic and environmental sustainability for generations. So you know what? If we can be as environmental as we can, but if we go broke doing it, it's not going to do us any good. So right, those two things are very important to me. And so that's what we focus on our ranch. I'm not going to talk too much about our ranch. I'm more interested in talking about polycultures today and a little bit on carbon. But this carbon is not going to be, my talk on carbon is not about climate change or anything, right? You guys are all producers, right? The reason I want carbon is to put it into my land to get more water holding capacity and to get more nitrogen. End of story. Okay, that's why I want carbon. I make more profit. Okay, it's not about any warm and fuzzy stuff, but the whole world's talking about it. But to me, as a producer, it's to make more money on my farm. So we're going to get into that. Just a little warning right off the bat. This is not a traditional agricultural topic. You might get offended. I might blame you. I might criticize you. I apologize. Okay, like this is my get out of jail free card because now I can say whatever I want because I already said sorry. Really sorry. Yeah. If you don't like what I have to say today, I am perfectly okay with that. You can call my boss. But I sleep with her, so you won't get very far. You don't want to get on her angry side. I don't work for anybody. I'm not representing the government. I am a producer, and I just am very passionate about this. I've been a grazer, so my talk's going to be more on the perennial side because that's what I've done all my life. But I'll tell you right now, I'm a little bored of grazing. My passion right now is to get the 10,000-acre grain farmer on board with polycultures. Okay? That we could make so much, take such a big step forward with our water cycle, with carbon, if we could get those big grain farmers on board. And I think we're sitting there on the edge of guys who are actually looking at this, okay? So that's my passion right now is actually working with polycultures with grain producers. So I'm going to tell you a little story. A really good friend of mine, Jean-Baptiste, we're like this, okay? Well, we would be if he was still alive. We're two peas in a pod, I think. He likes to go against the modern thinking of the time. Okay, I'm going to tell you a little story about him. He wanted to do an experiment. He was curious back in the day, back in 1634. He wanted to know how plants grow. And the modern thinking of the time in 1634 was that plants grow by eating the soil. Okay, so the plant would use up the soil to produce its crop. Okay, so he wanted to do an experiment. So in his words, he took a large earthen pot, so a big flower pot, dug a hole in the ground, put that pot in there. Then he took some topsoil, and he dried it. So he dehydrated it first, and he weighed it. He took 200 pounds of topsoil, okay, put it in this large earthen pot. Then he planted a baby willow tree, a shoot, in that pot. Covered it with a mesh so that soil couldn't blow in or blow out, and then he watered it. For 5 years, he watered that plant, that tree, and it grew and it grew. He didn't account for the leaves falling off, right? That's something that he missed, but he basically was growing this tree. At the end of 5 years, he pulled out the large earthen pot, pulled out the tree. So branches, trunk, and root systems, he weighed them. He had 178 pounds of wood that he produced. Okay, that's what the product was. He then took out the topsoil, dehydrated it again. Do you know how much topsoil he had left? 200 pounds. Exactly the same. Okay. Where did the tree come from? All he added was water. So his conclusion was that plants grow from water. Right? He was thrown in jail because it went against the modern thinking of the time. The modern thinking of the time, plants grow from the soil. Okay, what did he miss? Sunlight. Photosynthesis. The magic of photosynthesis. Okay, carbon was coming from the air. Okay, he missed that. Every plant, every tree, every weed is made up of 4 basic elements. And on a dry matter basis, 45% carbon, 45% oxygen, 6% hydrogen, and 1.5% nitrogen. Okay? Joe talked about 96%. Well, I'll take his 96, raise them 1.5%. I like poker. Because I think nitrogen we can get there too. Okay? 97.5% of every plant comes from the air, not the soil. Okay? And we spend all this time and energy worrying about what's in our soil. Okay? Jean was right. It doesn't come from the soil. Okay? And I think more people today should get thrown in jail for what they do to their soil. Not him. All right. When you get a soil test report back, you get available nutrients. Okay? Ask yourself, why are nutrients unavailable? Okay? Joe Williams, a good friend of mine and a producer, a soil scientist, did these samples out of, there's 3 different farms, random across Saskatchewan. He was doing this study. Look at the available versus the actual. Okay? Why are they not available? Okay, here's some more. Oops, I thought I had 2 in there. Yeah, there's 2 of them there. Okay? They're not available because we're lacking biology. The biology can get it. The mycorrhizae fungi that Joe was about to talk about and didn't have time, right? It's amazing what they can get for your plants. They form that relationship and can get the nutrients for you. Okay? We don't have a fertility issue in agriculture. We have a biological issue. I haven't bought fertilizer in 25 years. Okay? I don't need it. I don't want it. All it's doing is actually, it's killing my biology. I want my soils to work healthy. Dr. Christine Jones, a soil scientist out of Australia, talks about nitrogen and how it moves in the soil. And her one quote, I'm going to loosely quote it because I can't remember exactly, all of the nitrogen research that we've done over the last 40 or 50 years on how nitrogen works in the soil needs to be thrown out because it's all been done on dead soils. It acts completely different in a live soil with living biology. So we have a biological issue, not a fertility issue. Okay? What we need to get this going is we need a polyculture of plants. That gets me a polyculture of root systems, which is pushing out different types of exudate, right? Those different sugars that are going out, which gets me that polyculture of soil life. Okay? And that's the key for my perpetual, ongoing fertility program on my ranch. Okay? It's a healthy soil. Okay? Modern agriculture is all about fertilizer. Okay? It's a multi-billion-dollar industry. Okay? Where's a lot of that blue going from? Okay? We need to start understanding our economics, right? Big ag can sell to you. They hire salesmen. They're very good, right? I'm not selling anything that comes in a box, a bag, or a bottle. If you got to buy it in a box, a bag, or a bottle, you probably don't need it. Okay? You guys ever heard of the law of the minimum? There's another friend of mine made this. Actually, Carl and Justice here argue over who invented this, but I don't think it really matters because they're both dead. I used to work at a fertilizer dealership when I first started going to university, and they had this barrel on the wall. And the law of the minimum, basically it's your weakest link, right? Your crop will only grow to the most limiting nutrient. Okay? So this barrel is an example. What's the most important nutrient we'll need to add to our soil here? Phosphorus? Who said water? Nice. It's poured out of the barrel. It's hilarious that they use this barrel. I laugh every time I see this. It's water. Water makes up over 50% of every plant, and you're letting it run off your land. Okay, for me, water is the only nutrient I manage. Nothing else. I manage water. We need water on our land, and I love it, the fact that they use this barrel still. Okay? My goal on my ranch is to heal the soil and to heal the water cycle. I went 25 years ago, I went to college, got two diplomas in agriculture. Not once did they tell me that the water cycle's broken. Not once. Okay? And it's been broken for a long time. I'm going to play you a little video here. Does the volume work on here? I hope so. Have we tried?
Might have put your mic up to it.
Sean Connery wasn't available for sound, sorry.
Years ago, many of the mountains were arable. The valleys that were full of rich soils are now marshes. Hills that were once covered with forests and produced abundant pasture now produce only food for bees. Once the land was enriched by annual rains, which were not lost as they are now, by flowing from the bare land into the sea. Once the soil was deep, it absorbed and kept this water, and this water soaked into the hills and fed the springs and running streams everywhere. Now, abandoned shrines at these dried up springs attest that our description of the land is true.
Okay, that's the quote. Okay, it's describing a broken water cycle. Okay, about how the land used to absorb the water and fill the aquifers and replenish the water in the system, right? Do you guys know who said this? Plato. 400 years before Christ was born. He's describing a broken water cycle. Agriculture broke it. It's still not taught in our universities. You know what? Climate change, floods, fires in California right now, storms, droughts. We could mitigate a whole bunch of that if we just fixed the water cycle. And the good thing is the water cycle is really easy to fix. I fixed it on my ranch. Fixed it. Piece of cake. You know what the hard part is? Doing it on a global scale. If we could fix the water cycle, we could eliminate a whole bunch of our problems. Okay? And we knew about it 2,000 years ago, and we're still not dealing with it. So to me, it's frustrating. It's a water cycle. Hydrogen and oxygen. Okay? The two of our elements that every plant's made up of, over 50%. Okay? How do we get it? I need more carbon. I add carbon to my land, I automatically get more water. That's my goal, getting carbon. The whole world right now is very frustrating to me. The whole world right now is talking about carbon and all about reducing emissions. Okay? I do a lot of flying to do talks and seminars. The airline companies that I fly on, they're all bragging that they're going to be carbon neutral by 2030, 2050, whatever. Are they going to do it? No. Never. Never. Why? They only emit. They have no way of sequestering carbon. Carbon is a math equation, right? Carbon is an element. Matter cannot be created or destroyed. You can't destroy it. You can't make it. It just cycles. Everything's in a cycle. So everybody wants to measure one point of the cycle and say that we're reducing emissions at this one point and then brag about it, market it, and sell it. Agriculture is just as bad, right? We do that. We pick one point in the cycle and we try and market it. Say, oh, we're doing this, right? The cows aren't burping anymore. Okay? Well, carbon went into the cow. It's got to come out. So if it doesn't come out in their burps, where's it come out? Oh, in their farts. Okay? If it doesn't come out in the farts, where's it come out? Oh, it came out in the meat. And then you ate it. And then you farted. Okay? It's going to come out. Right? It's a cycle. You cannot create carbon. You can't destroy it. So let's think net carbon. The whole world's trying to get to carbon neutral, which means you're emitting the same amount that you're sequestering. Because the other half of the math equation is carbon sequestration. Nobody's talking about it. Very few industries on the planet have the ability to sequester carbon. Agriculture is one of them. Right? We can sequester carbon. My ranch, we did a carbon calculator a few years back. Pretty detailed, took us all day to go through all the numbers. We came back 94% sequestration and 6% emissions. Carbon neutral would be 50-50. We're way beyond carbon neutral. Okay? And again, it's not to, deal with climate change. I want carbon in my soil. As a farmer, I want to hold more water. I need more carbon to do that. Okay? So let's think net carbon, not reducing emissions at a single point. Okay? I can sequester a lot more. Now, agriculture can sequester carbon. Is agriculture carbon neutral? Not even close. We could be, but we're not, because we spend way too much time making fertilizers and chemicals and burning diesel, and it's ridiculous the amount that we do. But we need to step back, right? And we need to start thinking about sequestering more, right? Shoulder seasons, can we be sequestering carbon? Not just for, 3 months in the middle of the summer. Okay. So what is carbon sequestration? We need to be able to utilize photosynthesis more. Okay. Years ago, I was taught in academia that it takes 100 years to grow an inch of topsoil. Why even try? Right? That's 100 years. That's a long time. I just did last winter, went over to Estonia and Finland, did a couple talks over there. And Estonia, there was a speaker that got up and said, it takes 1,000 years to grow an inch of topsoil. I'm like, hoo-hoo, we're so much faster. We're only 100 years. That's ridiculous. The reason academia is teaching this is because they're thinking above the ground. We leave residue and it breaks down and becomes soil. Okay? 99% of that carbon above ground on the residue you leave is volatilizing back to the atmosphere, right? It's cycling above the ground. That's why it takes so slow if you're trying to just leave residue. Now, residue is really important for the water cycle. Don't get me wrong, but that's not how I grow soil. Okay? I need to go underground. Okay? I need photosynthesis to get carbon from the atmosphere to my plant. Okay? There's a term called albedo. Okay? The difference between the amount of sunlight collected and the amount of sunlight reflected. The University of Alberta came out to my place and they had a drone flying and they had a solar panel on the top and a solar panel on the bottom. So measuring the difference of the sunlight. So that's albedo. Much different term than libido. That's totally different. Okay? Albedo. So photosynthesis gets me the carbon. Now I have to have exudation, so the plant takes that glucose, pushes it out, and feeds the biology underground. Okay? And now I get that biology. We do a biological conversion to a long-term stable carbon source. Okay? Long-term, sticks in the ground. Forestry can also sequester carbon, but a lot of that's above ground. And a forest fire can come around and release it right away, right? We're trying to store it underground in a long-term stable spot. And guess what that gets me? More water. More water holding capacity. Very important, okay? So here's a picture of my soil. It's a soil pit that I dug on my ranch. You see the triangle right here? There's another one right here and another one right here. I'm in a gray wooded soil zone. Basically developed under leaf litter. It's all clay. We start with basically no topsoil. What that was a root system digging down and pushing out exudate, adding carbon to the soil. So I'm not growing soil on top by leaving residue. I'm pushing down into the base, which is a very, very clay, and I'm converting it into topsoil. Okay, I'm not growing it on top, I'm converting much faster. We can do it faster. You want to know how fast? This is a study from the University of Alberta. They came out, they did a research all across the prairies, all these little red dots. I'm the very top northwest one here. That's my ranch. Now, I'm not going to go into details on the whole study, but they compared an advanced grazing system with a continuous grazing system at every one of these sites. Overall, the study didn't jump out. There was such variety between land practices, management strategies. I didn't get a whole bunch out of the whole study, but I did get my data. I like my data. So they called it AMP, so adaptive multi-paddock grazing. We compared my field to my neighbor's field. They were kitty corner. They chose them scientifically. They went out there and chose these fields. Very similar topography, similar history, obviously the same rainfall, they're right side by side. So we're gray wooded soil. We basically start with no topsoil. 50 years ago, these were bulldozed because native for us is a forest. They were bulldozed and then continuously grazed. They've never been farmed because it's too rocky, too rough. You can drop into a hole with your quad when you're out there. But so the history were the same. So quick results. That's the short form of the results. We went from the control was 5.2% soil organic carbon to 11%. This study was 12 to 15 years since I'd started taking over this land. So previously they were all grazed the same continuously. We took over 15 years before the end of the study, and we doubled the carbon in it. Okay. You can see those soil plugs, right? We got a very dark AH horizon, and there's basically no AH horizon on the other side. The tests actually measured, they said that there's an AH horizon, but you can't see it. There's no color difference the whole way through. Okay, now we've got this distinct AH horizon that's on average now 10.8 inches deep. So in 15 years, we grew almost 11 inches of topsoil. Okay, a little quicker than 100 years, right? Okay, why am I doing this? For carbon credits? No, it's to hold more water. Okay, to hold more water, yes.
So your ranch is located in La Crete? Or
No, my ranch is near Westlock, Alberta.
Oh, West.
So just northwest of Edmonton. Yeah. Look at the nitrogen. The soil microbes want to balance your carbon to nitrogen ratio in the soil 24-1. Joe's chart said that. Okay. So as I increase carbon in my land, I will automatically get more nitrogen. So adding carbon to my land, I get more water, I get more nitrogen, right? I don't need to buy fertility. I have water and I have nitrogen. Okay. Okay, there's the actual studies. So we're measuring the AH horizons. One thing about soil tests, real quick, here's a tangent. Sorry, I'm going off on it. When you measure a 0 to 6 and 6 to 12, I don't like those measurements. I want to measure the AH horizon. Yes?
I heard a question behind me there. What is AGS or whatever on that previous?
When I'm doing a soil test, so the University of Alberta, what they did was they measured down and broke it at the AH horizon, not at 6 inches. Because what if you had 4 inches of AH horizon and then the 2 inches is clay, right? You just warped your measurement on your AH horizon.
I'm not really
Okay.
clear about what age horizon.
Basically your topsoil. AH, I don't know what that stands for. What does AH stand for? Something horizon. A horizon. That's really complicated, isn't it? It's got to be an A horizon.
Like the pan funnel where you're, and then the topsoil above that.
The topsoil is, so in a perennial system, it's very easy to see, right? It's the dark soil, and then it changes to its base material, would be your B horizon. Okay, so to me, what's in that topsoil versus what's in my clay base? Very, very distinct on my land.
I just Googled it. You wanna know what I mean?
Sure.
A horizon is your surface, and H means your layers of organic matter. So it would be your layers of organic matter in your surface horizon.
Yeah, because I had a soil scientist come out and they got talking about all sorts of different layers and it was above my head. You got a better definition?
Well, I took a bunch of soils in university, so your leaf litter layer, your LFH is your actual like undigested organics right at the top. Then your A layer is your stuff that has a higher carbon content, humic acid content, you know, it's been modified by weathering. B is it's been modified but alleviated into, so you have things
It's
washing
blended,
down from your A.
so then it'd be blended.
And your C is your parent material that hasn't been weathered.
Okay. I basically have A and C then.
Yeah.
It's very, very distinct.
That's how it jumps.
Yeah.
Especially by that where your farms.
Yeah. So we did pretty good. We doubled our carbon in 15 years. Here's another one. Gateway Research Organization actually came out years ago. I did a bale grazing demo, 2005, 2006. My first really big scale bale grazing, and it was brand new back then. The manager of the Gateway Research Organization said, "This is interesting, you crazy crackpot nut guy. Let's do a bit of a study on it." So they had no funding for it. So basically they took some soil tests and took a few pictures. That's about what the study was. But back in 2023, I was digging through my old shed and there was a filing cabinet there and I pulled it open and there's a folder that said soil tests. I'm like, what is that? Pulled it out. Here's the soil tests from back in 2005, 2006. So I got excited. So I went to compare them to today. So in the spring of 2003, the manager of the Gateway Research Organization came out and did some soil tests for me. Short note is we went from 3% to 7.1% in 17 years. Okay? Yeah, I mean, and the difference between the bale grazing and the control, which would have been the bale grazing got an advantage, it got hammered really quick. We fixed the water cycle and added a bunch of nutrients, okay? So that's the bale grazing side. The unfertilized side, that's what this is saying. would be the control. So we basically took a paddock, split it in half. I bale grazed one side. We did nothing to the other. So the other one, over the last 17 years, has just been getting good grazing management. Whereas the bale grazing one got bale grazed first, then good grazing management. So that's the difference. This was a cultivated field in 2001. I seeded it in 2002. And then in 2005, I bale grazed on it. So it was a start of a pasture, but it didn't do very well. We bale grazed on it and then just kicked it into gear. Okay. So we started at 2.6% organic matter. This would be the control because it's the unfertilized one. After we bale grazed, we measured it again, it was 3.2%. So that could be, we soil tested in different places. I think they did like 10 different sites. But the nitrogen has gone up. So all the urine we got from those cows out there, in 1 year, you're not going to see that much of an increase, I don't think. So I'm going to say they're about the same at that point. But after 17 years, now we have the 0 to 6 layer and the 6 to 12. Our soil tests have got a little fancier. So the top two are the bale grazing side and the bottom two are the non-bale grazing side. So we've gone from approximately 3% to 6% in 0 to 6 and 8.2 in 6 to 12. Okay, and then the non-bale graze side, so it was slower to get going because it didn't get a kickstart. 4.4 in 0 to 6 and 7.8 in 6 to 12. Yes, question.
Did you keep bale grazing those sites?
Did I keep bale grazing those sites? No, 1 year bale grazed, and that was it. So honestly, I wasn't going to get into bale grazing here today, but real quick results. Visually, that bale grazing paddock was fantastic the first year. The control was terrible, right? It didn't do very well. And then over the years, I kept data for 5 years and then observations for 10. After 10 years, they looked the same. Varied. I'm a custom grazer. But there'd be 250 head on 20 acres for 2 days. So in my rotation.
Would there be a benefit for more bale grazing, like year after year?
No. I do it once and then I move on. Yes.
How much percentage would the bale collect down?
How much wastage did I have of the bale? Probably about 15%. But I need that residue. I want that waste because that's my water holding capacity. So this was 17 years later after adding it. So what, right? This one was adding it.
But you have a mineral with your cows while you're feeding?
Depends on the herd. I'm a custom grazer, so it depends what my customer wants. But yes, I would prefer to have mineral because that's coming through my system. But I haven't added any fertilizer to any of this since then. Interesting note about this, the 6 to 12 is higher carbon than the 0 to 6. That doesn't happen in most soil tests, right? I think it's my perennial plants reaching down deeper and going deeper and doing more benefit deeper. Yes?
I can cover some bale grazing stuff.
Okay,
if
good.
you want to. So
Okay, let's move on from bale grazing. I didn't mean it to be a bale grazing talk. We're looking at carbon. Okay, so even in the soil plug, right, it was darker at the bottom than at the top. It was really cool. So we're digging deeper. Those perennials are digging deeper. And no earthworms were hurt in the making of this photo. Okay? This guy must have been swimming straight up and down because we got him. But that's kind of cool that when you put down a soil plug, you pull up an earthworm, eh? Yes, question.
There must be something to this bale grazing because busloads of ranchers from the state are now coming up to observe bale grazing.
I got a guy in Georgia who's thanking me for teaching him how to bale graze. I'm like, Georgia, you shouldn't even need to bale graze, but okay, great, wonderful. So, okay. So, we're adding carbon. We can do it a lot faster than academia is telling us. We can build it. This is my field. I'm in the gray wooded soil zone. I'm 10 miles away from the black soil zone. Okay, the Edmonton to Calgary, the Highway 2 corridor. I call it the idiot-proof zone. You can do whatever you want to your land and it seems to still be resilient. But for how many years, right? we're depleting our carbon. And if you started with some really, a V8 engine, right, it takes you a long time to kill it. But if you got a little 4-cylinder, what you started with, you're going to kill it faster. So this was my land. I average about $25 an acre to rent my land. Okay, this is my neighbor's land in the black soil zone, who averages probably $100 to $150 an acre to rent. Okay, so that's the value of this land. Totally different, 10 miles apart. I am now up to 11% soil organic carbon in the gray wooded soil zone. He is now down to 4%. Okay, they just keep adding fertilizer, zero till, best management you can do for grain farming, right? We need to get this reversed. We need to start adding this up. This is degenerative farming. This is regenerative farming.
Is that just in the summer that you're charging $25 an acre? Or is that all year?
That's for a year. I rent the land for a year. Okay, so just a rental rate. Okay, so, but we need to start doing this on more acres. Okay, and we can do it fast with polycultures. I don't work for Covers & Co., but I'm really passionate about what they're doing. They're sending the same message that I've been sending for 20 years, trying to get these polycultures out there. It's a mindset shift. I'm struggling now. Again, go back to my buddy, Jean. Okay, how do plants grow? Modern agriculture grows plants from the soil. They put in a seed, they add fertilizer, it uses up the fertilizer. Regenerative agriculture, we grow soil from the plants. My goal is to put a plant in the ground and allow it to grow soil. Then I do better. I make more. Of course, I'm going to harvest something off of it. I'm a custom grazer. I'm harvesting with cattle. Cattle or livestock are a much easier and quicker way to fix the land. I just drove through southern Saskatchewan. They need more fences. Oh my gosh, they need more fences, right? We need to get the livestock back out on every acre of grainland. Okay? Herbivores are a keystone species in that grassland environment. They don't take from the environment, they add to it. They add polycultures to the whole system. Organisms, biodiversity. Just as an example, one cow turd is home to over 350 different species of critters, right? You take the cow turd out of your ecosystem, you just lost 350 species. Okay? We need that on the grainland. I'm very passionate about this. I want to get farmers, cattle ranchers and grain farmers working together. Okay? If you ever want to look this up, there's a fella in Colorado by the name of Brendan Rocky. He's a potato farmer. Most regenerative farmer I know. Right? And first time I met him, I was going to Montana and we were doing a talk together. They sent me this agenda. Steve Kenyon, regenerative grazing. Brendan Rocky, potato farmer. I'm like, oh my gosh. We're going to be at odds. Like, this is opposite farming. Tillage, chemicals, right? Nope. Google him. Unbelievable what he's doing. He's doing polycultures with his potatoes. He's got 7 different species with his potatoes that are benefiting his potatoes. His alternate crop. He only has two crops in his rotation. His alternate crop is a 16 species cover crop that he has a neighbor come in and graze. And then he plants his potatoes again next year. And he's more profitable than he ever was. Same production that he had before, but more profit because his inputs are way lower. So we grow soil from the plants. Different way of thinking. Okay. That's my preaching. Okay. Now I'm going to show you some of the stuff that I've actually done, how I do it, a little maybe not so traditional. I'm on the perennial side. Okay. When I get a piece of grain land, I convert it to a pasture because that's what I do. I'm a grazer. So lots of times I will broadcast and trample is my term. This is a quad mounted spreader that I either put on a quad or on the back of my pickup, and I drive out and I spread seed. Okay, I've been doing it for years. I'm really cheap.
Just by hand?
It's run by a battery. It's got a spinner on it.
Oh, okay.
It's got a spinner on it. I've also used a Valmar. this works really well, a little bit more accurate than the spreader. The Gateway Research Organization, they have one of these that you can rent, and it's only like $1 an acre, like really cheap, except when I take it out. Because last time I took it out, I broke both arms off of it because my land's so rough. So then I had to take it to the welding shop and get it fixed up. So my $1 per acre went a little bit higher. So, yes, question. Pardon? If you're a member of the Gateway Research Organization, they rent it out to members, and it's really, really cheap. So that's around Westlock area, though. But yeah, but you can get a Valmar in lots of places. All I'm saying is a Valmar is a pretty accurate way to do it too. So I've been broadcasting and trampling for years, and what I'm trying to do is get a polyculture of plants out there. Okay, I want different types of root systems. And I want to get animal impact out there. And the key to my animal impact is not only their hooves, the stimulation, but also the biological impact. Because that herbivore has food or actual biology in the manure and urine, right? Food for biology is coming out the back. We're feeding the soil. There's a symbiotic relationship between the biology in the rumen and the biology in the soil. We're triggering it. There's even biology coming off their saliva. The phlegm that comes out of their nostrils, right? Floating in the water tank, that's kind of, yeah, that's good stuff. Okay? There's even biology that falls off their hair coat. Okay? So to get that stimulated, I need the livestock and I need the polyculture root systems pushing out different sugars. Okay? So I want annuals and perennials, I want tap roots and creeping roots. Why do I want creeping roots? Those creeping rooted grasses, they're not production. They don't produce. Yeah. Cover the ground, fill in the holes, fix the water cycle. I want those creeping rooted grasses to hold on to it. Bunch grasses, people talk about fixing compaction, right? We need those tap roots out there. No, actually we need the bunch grass roots, those fibrous big roots going down 8 feet. Tap roots help, both of them together are better. But just putting an alfalfa plant out there, 90% alfalfa in your field, all those tap roots, turns into concrete. I have a backhoe. I try and dig holes in these all the times. And when I was in that 90% alfalfa field, all those tap roots, it was like concrete trying to dig through it. Okay, those bunch grasses work really well. Cool season and warm season, forbs and legumes. Okay, I want all these different root systems out there to stimulate my biology. Okay, and the livestock to get it triggered, and I need that manure. I call this a soil health improvement treatment. Okay, to remember that it's just SHIT. Okay, soil health improvement treatment. Okay. So I've been doing cover crops for years. I wasn't very good at it back then, but one of my first ones was in 2002. Sorry for the bad picture, but I took over a crop field and I broadcast and trampled. Okay, so I put a bunch of seed out there and I turned the cows out to graze it. So they are actually grazing volunteer, mostly fall rye. The year before it was a fall rye crop. So I put out a mix of probably 6 or 7 different types of grass species of perennials only. I didn't put legumes out there because fall rye is actually supposed to be in a allopath and it would kill the legumes, so I didn't want to have my legumes wasted. So one of the first early attempts of this. You guys remember what happened in 2002? Oh yeah, it was that 100-year drought. Oh, 100-year drought. It was pretty bad. Guess what come up? That was a beautiful crop of Canada thistle, right? Did well. Don't worry, you couldn't see this from the county road. Don't worry. What did I do? Nothing. I grazed it just like I was regularly going to graze it. I used my grazing concepts, good graze period, long rest period, got my animal impact in there, had a good stock density, and I wanted to leave a soil armor. Okay, I want to build those up. Ignored the weeds, basically, and I grazed them. There's year 2. See how healthy that crop is? It's coming back. It's coming through it. The weeds actually helped develop an environment so that these plants could survive. Okay. Now, I actually plant weeds now. Years ago, when I first bought my first piece of property up there, it was full of dandelion, and how do I get rid of all these dandelions? Oh no. Okay. Now I plant plantain, right? Very similar to dandelion because I want it in my fields. I want those weeds in there to help change the microenvironment at the soil surface, right? Leaves residue, brings nutrients. They are there to heal the land, okay? Nowadays, though, sorry, got to finish this. There's year 4. Couldn't find a year 3 picture, sorry. And I'm very honest with my pictures. I'm not going to fake a year 3 picture for you. Year 4, the thistles are basically gone.
How frequent do you seed?
Just once.
Just once that year?
This one was just once. I will top dress. I'm going to get into top dressing later. I will top dress. I've learned that I have to do it after severe droughts. I want to get my legumes because I lose my clovers. But this one, just once. I seeded just once. So here, let's jump forward a little bit. 2019, I've learned quite a bit since 202. I'm going to put the weeds out there. I'm going to add a cover crop to my perennials to establish it. If I fill in all the gaps, nature doesn't have to fill in the gaps for me, right? That's where my cover crop comes in. So this was a canola field back to back. I took it over. I spread out a 21 different species mix. I'm going to show you my experiment that I did here quickly in a bit. But this was basically then turn the cattle out to graze what was coming up. So this was basically volunteer canola. Don't stand behind these cows. They were runny, a little high in protein, but they grazed it. We grazed it a day at a time. So I just put a cross fence across a day, and we stomped those seeds into the ground. And we got a little bit of rain. You know, that helps. You do this on a dry year, it doesn't work near as good, but we got a little bit of rain. And this is what looked like in July. I got all those weeds out there. You guys know what that weed is? Yeah, canola. It's a weed for me. Okay, but I also had all mine coming underneath as well. Okay, I didn't graze it again until September, and that's what it looked like. Okay, I did not add a lick of fertilizer. Okay, where'd the fertility come from? The air, right? We got the biology in there. We had the biological stimulation of the animals. This was a grain crop for years and years and years. It doesn't have the biology. So I needed to get the cows out there to get that biology in there. Warm seasons did really well. That Japanese millet in there is very prevalent on this first year. Yes?
Did you ever get any information on how much uptake you got from your broadcast and trample? What percentage of your seed take?
It was pretty high this year.
Oh,
Yeah. On a soft crop field, I have really good luck with it, as long as you have the moisture. But on a top dress on a pasture, not so much.
After you first seed you land, how long did you wait before you began?
Right away. Yeah, the cattle came right away I wanted that seed to soil contact. So they walked everywhere and stomped it into the ground. And then I pulled them off as the rain came. So if you can see, forecast that the rain's coming, this works a lot better. Okay.
So you would just seed, say, whatever paddock you were going into the day before, and then put the cattle in?
Yep.
Do them
Well, this one
day by day?
this
or
was
do
a
it all and then kind of move the cattle?
This was a 60-acre field touching my 1,100-acre pasture. So I was very flexible. If it was going to rain 4 inches, I wouldn't have done it, because you don't want them out there when there's that much moisture, because they'll just punch it out. So, but it was one small piece in the whole pasture. So, so there's year 2. Year 1 is mostly annuals. Okay, those are my weeds. I planted weeds out there and they did well. They're weeds that I like. Okay, year 2, there's my perennials coming in. Sweet clover, that's a biennial. It's only going to come in and then disappear. Okay, there's year 3. Failed. What was year 3, 2019, 2020, 2021? What happened in 2021? Oh, the 100-year drought.
Yeah.
Wait a minute, 202. That's not 100 years. Yeah, it was very dry. So yes, it didn't work on 2021. I'd only had this land for 3 years. I don't have my water cycle fixed yet. Is it a fertility issue? Not at all. It was lack of moisture. Now this looked 10 times better than my neighbors. Okay. Is the fertility gone? Here's year 4. Okay. No fertility added. This is now a perpetual, recycling of nutrients. I've got it in the system and it's getting its own. 97.5% of it's coming from the air. Okay.
Do you have any problems with trees coming up in that pasture at all?
Trees coming up is going to be a bacterial to fungal ratio issue. So if it's too highly fungal, you'll get trees and saplings and rose bushes. I got lots of rose bushes. To deal with that, you need to feed the bacteria. Okay, so bacteria like green living plants, so you stomp down green plant material. If you're the other way, you've got weeds in your field and you're highly bacterial, you need to stomp down dead plant material because that feeds the fungus. So depends what you're aiming at is which you do. Okay, so here's an aerial photo of this field. Okay, we used the pickup truck with the spreader on the back. Okay, my goal was to do an experiment. This side was going to be all the small species, all the small seeds. So it was about 16 different species. The middle I was just going to skip. I wanted to see what nature could do with just grazing. You know, is there a seed bank? How much seeds in the seed bank? Now it's a grain field, right? For how many years? How many seeds do you think are in the seed bank?
Probably lots still.
Not what I needed.
Probably not, no.
Other stuff, they've been killed forever. And then this side was going to be the whole mix, so all the small seeds and the big seeds. So my big seeds were mostly my weeds. So barley, oats, sunflowers, peas. What else was there? Something else. Anyway, close enough. So I was going to see if those big seeds had a big benefit to it. So I hired the neighbor. I was busy at the time. I hired the neighbor's teenager to come help me drive the truck because I needed another body. So this is highly GPS, structured system that I got going here. I tied a white plastic bag on the fence post here and one here, and then a white plastic bag here and a white plastic bag there. So I told him, start driving here. We're going to do this piece first. Start driving here, go across to that white plastic bag, move over 15 feet, drive back, move over 15 feet, okay? Not hard, right? Okay, so I'm in the back setting the device, right, getting it ready, and he did a couple passes like that, and then all of a sudden I'm like, where are we going? And then he did about 3 passes to this plastic bag. So I went and tried to straighten it up, and my experiment got a lot narrower, right? But so then I tried to. I was driving here, by the way. This is the highway, and this is a hill, sloped up. You can see every single mark that's out there still to this day, right? So my advice to you, if your neighbors aren't talking about you in the coffee shop, step up your game a bit, okay? You want that. You want them talking. One other thing that I noticed, there was very few sunflowers that came up here. And I've determined that just about every old retired farmer that I rent land from, at some point in their retirement, built birdhouses for fun. This particular farmer, there's birdhouses all the way up and down his driveway, all the way around his yard. Hindsight, the large seeds should not have been right by his driveway. I should have put them over here and put all the small seeds here. Because I went out there, turned the cows into the first paddock to graze after I seeded it, and I'm like, yeah, look at that. I'm like, there's a lot of birds out here. There's way more birds than cows. So I think they were out there getting all my sunflowers and all my peas. So not a lot of sunflowers in this experiment. They didn't show up. I could count on one hand probably the number that actually made it to flower. And there was quite a few seeded out there. But in general, my experiment here, these two both look pretty good. So my big seeds didn't do that much of an improvement. But where I didn't seed at all, yeah, huge improvement. Like everything else looks way better than that. You can drive across that little gap up there. You can drastically see nature did not have the seed bank in there for me, right? Well worth it to add the seeds, in my opinion, especially if it was grain land for many years and you're trying to turn it back. Okay, so I got tired of the neighbors laughing at me maybe. No, actually, I got tired of my back being sore because my land is so rough. I broke the arms off the Valmar, right? How's that on my body? I'm getting older. That doesn't work so good anymore. I went out and bought a drone a couple of years ago. So now we are GPS precision. Okay, really neat. This thing can fly at night. It doesn't need to see, right? And I was up at Bonnyville last 2 falls ago, seeding right along the highway with this thing. I was out there between 8 o'clock and midnight seeding. The landowner got 27 phone calls that night. What the heck is going on out there? There's some UFO out there. It lights up like a Christmas tree. Yeah, red and green lights flashing. It's pretty cool at night. So the yellow is what I planned, and then the green is what it's already seeded of that plan. So now we're very, very straight. Because you guys have all done that before, right? Aimed for the dark fence post as you're driving, and then come back and you aim over from the dark fence post, and then you're wondering which dark fence post? Yeah, okay. I don't have that problem anymore. This is nice. He basically flies himself. His name is Sid, and he works for me. There's the Christmas tree coming up. I program him, and then he just does the work. My job is to bring him home before his battery runs out and before his seed tank runs out. And he does everything else. Like if I stop him, he's just about out of seed, I'll bring him back. I'll change the battery, fill up the tank, and he remembers where he quit. I just hit go, and he goes back and just continues on his journey. So very intelligent little guy, I would say. I've only crashed him twice. Oops. This is a T10. It's the smallest seeding drone you can buy from DJI. It's under 25 kilograms, so you can just have a basic license to fly it. You don't need the advanced license. They have a T20, a T30, a T40, and now a T50. They're coming with them. Well, they just came out with a T50, so that's impressive. Okay, they're getting bigger. I can seed 15 acres an hour. Okay, so comparable to what I was doing before. Now this is the smallest one too. The bigger ones can go faster. Very small seed tank though. I have to land this thing actually it's the batteries that's the problem. I have to land it every 8 minutes. But it's really quick, right? When it lands, I change the battery, fill the tank, and I gotta pour it in there, put the lid on, and he's going again. Probably about a 2-minute pit stop. So I can seed pretty quick. So there's my setup. There's my little drone, and there's my big drone. Generator, couple of chargers. I got 5 batteries on cycle charging. I can keep this thing going full time. Okay, so that's my new toy. So now when I'm pasture top dressing, so the seeding story I just told you was about taking over some grain land, and that's how I broadcast and trample. So now we're gonna top dress on a pasture. A little different. Frost seeding is my most successful. So if I can take some seeds out there in the springtime when it's freezing at night and it's thawing during the day, get that freeze-thaw action, that helps to get me some seed-to-soil contact. I've had some pretty good luck with that. Okay. My other option is fall seeding, which is actually the same thing, but I get it out there in the fall ahead of time. So after the growing season's done, make sure it's good and done. You don't want anything to germinate in the fall. Get it out there under the snow before the snow hits, and you could do the same thing. I've just got a much bigger window in the fall than I do in the spring, because how many of you guys are busy in the spring? Yeah, everybody. So in the fall, I'm not as busy. I can do a lot more land in the fall and still get the freeze-thaw action in the springtime. Okay. Third, broadcast and trample on top. Doesn't work as well as on a soft crop field, because you got to push them into a hard sod pasture probably, right? So if I can get ahead of the cattle, they're on this paddock today and this paddock tomorrow, go out and seed those ahead of time, I have some decent results.
Would it be like 50% conversion in comparison, or 25%?
Depends on the rainfall. You tell me when it's going to rain, and I will tell you when this is going to work. Right?
So the frost seeding, and again, mine's all pasture, and
yeah.
I'm not far from you, so it's all rock. I can grow patios and stuff.
Yeah.
But the frost seeding, do you need to trample that? Because my problem is I've got some areas that have taller grasses and stuff in it, but I want to diversify what's there. So I'm trying to figure out, how do I get the seeds into those areas where I really can't take the cattle in right now?
Okay, I was going to say do both if you can. Yeah. If you can't, honestly, getting the seed out there, it might not germinate right away. It might take months or years to germinate. I've actually seen it months or years later germinating. 2 years ago, I went through the funding program, bought $26,000 worth of seed, broadcasted out there in the spring, got most of it out there in the spring on frost seeding. I can't believe I got that much out on frost seeding. Nothing came up. We got a bunch of rain end of July. August, I had legumes everywhere. I'm worried about bloat. Okay, so months later, those seeds came up. I had a student I hired years ago, high school kid. I said, okay, we're going to seed this clover. It was a 3-way mix of clover back then. sweet clover, white clover, and red clover. I said, we're going to seed this quarter. Here's my quad. Here's the spreader. Go back and forth on every paddock every 15 feet and put this seed out there. Okay, so he's done. He came home 4 hours later, said he was done. I'm like, okay, that should have taken you all day. What'd you do, dump the seed in the ditch? About 6 years later, I see strips of sweet clover coming up 50 feet apart. He had a lot more faith in that spreader than I did, that's for sure. But clear as day, sweet clover lines down my field, right? You can see exactly where he drove. Some of these seeds need a vernalization period, a trigger, a catalyst to get them to germinate, right? To me, adding them to the seed bank is not going to hurt. Right now with the funding programs that is pushing this, you guys should all be doing it. Sicer milk vetch. 15, 20 years ago, I put out a bag of Sicer milk vetch. I heard it was the greatest stuff ever, right? Like 2 years ago, I've got some plants of Sicer milk vetch. I'm going, oh, look at this. They're here, finally, right? So I like adding to the seed bank anytime I can. Another question, I saw a hand go up. No? Yes?
I was wondering what the funding program is for.
I'm going to get to them. Yeah, right at the end.
What about pounds per acre with that?
So I'm top dressing here with mostly legumes, a couple of broadleafs as well. 5 to 10 pounds, depending on how much money you want to put out there. We actually, Covers & Co. came to me and I helped them design their new rejuvenation blend. Yeah. I actually got my input in there because I wanted it to fit in the drone better. Because I can't do big fluffy mixes in my drone. Too fluffy and I can't carry enough. So anyway, yeah, they got a good one there. Okay, how am I doing for time?
You got about 20 minutes.
20 minutes left. All right, I can tell more stories. So I've had quite a bit of success with this on pasture. Like I said, frost seeding works the best. It might not come up right away, but you get the seeds out there and they benefit. So lots of clover. That's easy in my environment. Okay, it might not work in your environment, right? Alberta has so many different environments. Clovers work when they have wet feet, and as soon as we have a really dry year, I lose all my clovers, right? So then I've figured out that I'm going to reseed some clovers after those droughts. So after drought of 2021, that's why I put a whole bunch of seed out there. But not necessarily in your area. The one problem I've found is years ago I used to put alfalfa and Sicer milk vetch in my mixes and tried them, and they didn't work, right? I didn't see results right away, so I stopped using them in my mix. But the drought of 2021, the alfalfa was the only thing that was growing out there for legumes. Everything else died off. So I've got those in my mix again, trying to get some more diversity out there. I've got Sicer milk vetch, I've got hairy vetch, red clover, sweet clover, white clover. Couple of different types of alfalfa. We're trying some new creeping rooted alfalfas that we want to see what they'll do. So I want to get that back in there because you never know what kind of year it's going to be, right? So I want a little bit more diversity anyway.
Steve, are you seeding those asters, or is that
I top dress.
with the asters?
No, what's the asters?
Purple flowered one?
That one? No, I didn't seed those. Just pretty in the picture, right? Sicer milk vetch, right? Years later, even if you got the perfect crop conditions, the seed bed's perfect, this stuff is still really hard to establish. So getting it out there to me was important. The baby rattle, once you've seen the baby rattle, you'll know it. It's Sicer milk vetch. The seeds, when they get dry, you can shake them and they rattle like a baby rattle. So I saw these come up after like 15 or 16 years ago. I actually seeded them. There was 3 patches across my paddock. And I'm a big fan of Joe Williams. I had his tables up there earlier. And he talks about the seed microbiome and how important it is to have those seeds that have the same biology that your land does. Okay, so I went on that concept. They're growing right there. So I want them to reseed. And the most successful times I've reseeded is when I've accidentally had something go mature and then we grazed it. And it's amazing how well it reseeds itself then. So these 3 little patches, I decided I'm going to try this with. So I ran a cross fence across this paddock, but I hit all 3 of those patches. It was a really crooked fence. Went right on the one side of it. Then I grazed this side with the cattle. And then when I moved the cattle to the other side, I moved the step-in post over so they couldn't get to that sisal milk vetch. So what I did was basically let those go mature. They didn't graze those 3 patches. Next rotation comes around, everything else is nice and green. Those patches are not, they're mature, but they still grazed them. Because sisal milk vetch has a really long, like late in the season, they're still very, very palatable. And I'm hoping, that's my experiment this time, is that now we're gonna spread that all over the pasture and hopefully it'll kick into gear a lot quicker. So I'm excited about that. I always do experiments, right? They're not failures, they're experiments. Hairy vetch, added new 2 years ago to my mix. I didn't really know much about it before. Interesting observation, and this is just an observation, they love to establish near thistle plants. I don't know why, all these little purple flowers are now in my little, any spot I've got some thistles. So there's a symbiotic relationship there. Are they gonna outcompete the thistle? Are they doing the same job as I don't know, but it's interesting.
Maybe they like the bacteria in the soil.
Yeah, they might like it. They might like something. There's some kind of relationship there. So I'm observing that some more. Plantain, right? I said before, I used to try and get rid of dandelions, or I wanted to get rid of them, and now I'm planting dandelions basically in my pasture. It's not a legume, but it's a different type of root system that I want to get established into my pastures. Alfalfa, different types of alfalfa. The other one that I've got in my mix now is chicory. And I didn't know much about chicory before. And the first year I planted some and I looked it up and I found out there's a chicory plant. Okay, that's what it looks like, cool. And then this summer I'm walking through my pasture and pasture's all regrowing, but there's this plant about this tall. I'm like, what the heck is this? First I thought it was like a Russian thistle, like you know how they just stand out? It's the second year of a chicory plant. I didn't know it like completely changed look. So if you see a weird thing in your pasture. Pardon?
You can make Folgers coffee now.
There you go, yeah. Cool. Sweet clover. Everybody's scared of sweet clover. Anybody know why? Bleeding issues, okay? The reason everybody's scared of this is anybody who wants to sound smart has to tell you about dicoumarin disease. Okay, the number of sessions I've been in where the expert in the room is saying, oh, you can stay away from sweet clover because it has dicoumarin disease. Your cows will bleed to death. Sweet clover disease. It only happens with moldy sweet clover. Okay, in a pasture, is it going to get moldy? No. In a hay situation, it might, if it gets mold on it. Now, in all of my years of talking, I love sweet clover. Been talking about it for 20 years. I've never had a producer in the room yet that has had an animal die of sweet clover disease, right? That's how rare it is. But every smart guy who just got out of university wants to tell you, don't use sweet clover. Okay? One of the best marketing ploys in the last 10 years is tillage radish, right? I mean, I'm not going against tillage radish, but they're like, tillage radish, this great root system that's gonna do great things for your land, and it does. I'm not against tillage radish. They did a really good job marketing. I've had sweet clover for years. It's got this great taproot. It's also a legume, produces nitrogen, but everybody's scared of sweet clover, so I love it. I don't put it in my ration or in my seed mix as a forage. It is a soil amendment. After a drought, after hard times, this is gonna be triggered and it's gonna kick into gear and it's gonna come heal your soil. Okay, it's just like thistle. It's a great plant, just like thistle. I can't find thistle seed anywhere, so I have to go with sweet clover. Yeah. Yes, question. Yeah. Bird's foot trefoil, yes, that's in my mix too. I'm new to it. Now, bird's foot trefoil, I've seen it very successful in Northern Ontario. It's a weed in their lawn, okay? In that environment, that's the weed. I'm gonna suggest in Northern Ontario, you use bird's foot trefoil. In our environment, the weed in my lawn is white clover. It's always in my mix because I know it's gonna work, okay? So I did put some in. I've had it established and I've seen right there, next picture. But yeah, I'm trying to get some diversity out there. Yes, for sure. But yeah, sweet clover is actually, it's there just to heal. In 202, I learned a lot in 202. I was a new farmer back then, and 202 I learned so much because it was a wreck. I am originally from Saskatchewan. We used to bale sweet clover all the time. Oh, we never had any animals die. Oh, oops. We used to bale it all the time. The coarse stems, right? My dad never gave us gloves when you're on the Stuker with the square bales. They're coarse, very coarse. But the ditches were full of sweet clover all the time. It's a drier environment. I moved up by Edmonton, a wetter environment. There's no sweet clover. There's nothing. And these beautiful ditches of grass and clover. I'm like, why doesn't anybody bale this? Right? I guess they didn't need to. The drought of 202 hit. Everything went brown. Like it was a severe drought. 203 hit. The ditches are all full of sweet clover. Where'd the seed come from? They were always there, right? It's nature saying, hey, you had a hard time, let's kick this clover into gear and we'll heal the land. So I want sweet clover out there, not for them to eat. It's there for when nature needs it. And birdsfoot trefoil, yes, trying it. It is establishing. I don't know how long it's going to stay. All right, so that's my pasture stuff, perennial stuff. I'm going to kick into my passion now is working with grain farmers trying to get their land regenerative. Because it's not that, it's pretty easy in a pasture situation. It's not that hard. I'm working with a grain farmer now. He rented me this little piece of pasture because he came to me and he said, I want to get cows on my land, so we need cows over close to me because he doesn't have any. So I'm like, okay. We took this little piece, 100 acres, and we're grazing it. So the idea is to get animals out on the rest of his land to benefit the grain part. So what we've done over the years, we've done crop residues. He had pea straw out there. We bunched it. Joe talked about the buncher. Put these little piles all across the field with pea straw, and then we grazed across with a cross fence. Got some manure, some urine out on his pasture or on his cropland. Okay. We did 185 acres of swath grazing one year for him. He's experimenting with polycultures, new to it, still just trying to play with it, encouraging. He put peas and oats together. And about 5 or 6 years ago, I don't know if you guys remember, all of BC was on fire and all of Saskatchewan was on fire. What happened to us? We were covered in smoke for the entire month of August, okay? His oats did not mature. They just sat there for the entire month of August and did nothing. So we're getting into September, and they're still not even close to matured. He said, I'm not going to get anything out of this. Do you want to graze it? I'm like, do I want to graze a full crop of oats that's still green with peas in it? Of course. That's awesome. That sounds great. He actually said he's made the most money he's made in years on that crop. Now, that being said, I think he took crop insurance first. But then we paid him quite well for that full crop, and he was super happy. And we recycled all that nutrients back onto his land. If a grain farmer wants to get into this and speed up the healing of your soil, winter graze it, right? Get some animals out there. Trying to do this grazing in the summer, depending on the environment you're in, can be risky because if you got 4 inches of rain, you will do more damage to that grain field than you will benefit. Okay, so if you're the grain farmer trying to get them, plan for winter when everything's frozen. And then there's no chance or less chance of them doing any damage. But that worked really well. Make sure you plan it so you're done before spring breakup. Same thing. You don't want to be out there punching out his field when spring breakup's happening. So, but yeah, really, really successful. We started here with 140 acres of graze fallow. So graze fallow is kind of a term I made up, so it's not in any dictionary. We used to summer fallow land, right? It was to rest it. Well, we're graze following it. So we're resting his grain land. The idea was to graze it for 5 years. He had some land that wasn't doing very well, and he wanted to see if cows could fix it. So I'm like, okay, I'm up for the game. Did 140 acres the first year, and then the price of canola went up. So I got back down to 13 acres, plus my pasture. So I have this little tiny field now, right here, that I got to graze fallow. So I'll show you a video of it here pretty quick. But the idea is to see if we can heal this with cattle, because his yield monitor was just saying every time he went past these areas, it didn't work. Even the first piece when we did the full part, he made me fence weird around an area. Instead of doing the whole piece, I had to go around because he still wanted to keep the good part. So anyway, that's what we were trying to do. Last summer was year 5. So I have some fences to pull out. Now, the first 3 years, he kind of did this half-assed. Didn't do full cover crops. I remember him saying, I'm just going to put in whatever I've got in the, whatever's left in the seed shed. And then he talked to a Covers & Co. dealer and put in a full 16 species mix. So for the last 2 years. So we'll see what happens. We took soil tests ahead of time. We hope we're going to take soil tests at the end, but really the answer is going to be his yield monitor, right? Did we do any benefit to that land? So I'm excited to see some results. We've done intercropping, tried to put a cover crop underneath the wheat. So we've done it a couple years, like we're kind of new at this. We need more research on this, by all means, right? We got innovators putting money out here and making mistakes and trying to fix this. We need more research on this, obviously. But we had wheat. He seeded the wheat, let it establish, sprayed it out, got control of his weeds, and then we went back in and put a cover crop underneath it. 1 year was really good. 1 year wasn't so good. It just was a dry year on the one that wasn't so good. So when it didn't work, it just didn't work for me to bring cattle over. Right? There wasn't enough there for me to, truck cattle over, and so economically it didn't work on my side. His side, he still had a living root in the soil in the fall. Right? He still had that benefit, so still worked for him either way. And then we did some drone seeding. Problem with that, I've only done it once now. Drone seeded above, I'm going to show you a video, above his crops. So the idea is to get out there when the crop is still, I'd like to do it in July, and then get those plants just to germinate and establish, and then come in and harvest the crop. Then you've got these plants that are green, living, ready to go when that crop gets off. The problem is we've got such a short growing season, you can't really wait till after you harvest the crop because you're not going to get any growth at that time. So we're playing with it. We're trying it. Problem is we got zero rain that fall. Nothing. So you tell me the year it's going to rain, I'll tell you the year this is going to work. The next spring, it germinated really nicely, right when he didn't want it. He sprayed most of it out, but last fall I went out there after he took his canola off. There's these great big turnips out there. He had all sorts of living root in the fall, so it's still working. Even if it's just the grain side of it, right? Even if we're not grazing it, still having those living roots out there feeding that biology is a benefit. Okay. There we're above the bar. This is a barley crop we were above. There was moisture that year, so we got a pretty good catch. I helped a friend out, did some drone seeding above his corn. Now, what I found, we did the whole field. He had some areas of the field that caught really good with corn to begin with, and other fields that did terrible. So what he was trying to do was just top up a little bit. Where the corn was good, we had very little results, right? There's no, as Joe said, the sun couldn't get down there anyway. Where it was fairly bare, we had some pretty good catch on this. So what I learned from that is just go out and seed the parts that the corn didn't do well on. But we've done that. When I do my graze fallow, it's always been direct seeded in. So if you have the equipment, you have the guy close to you that you can hire, whatever, direct seeding will be better. Okay. We've used this John Deere 750, and this is the unit that my neighbor has, the grain farmer I work with. And cover crop blends. He's done different every year, but that's what we've been trying to do. Okay, so you will get better germination. I do the broadcast and trample because that's the equipment I have, and I'm really, really cheap. And most of my stuff's on pasture anyway. So, right, when I'm taking over a piece of grain land, usually it's one little piece compared to my overall pasture. So, okay, but I have used this one right into a pasture before too. They told me that you will not rejuvenate a pasture without spraying it out first. And I don't really like to spray. So I said, you telling me I can't do something? I'm going to do it. So what I did was I purposely overgrazed my pasture really hard in the spring. Hammered it. And then we seeded it with the zero till. I had a beautiful catch, a whole bunch of seedlings coming out this tall. I was down there on my hands and knees taking videos, and we had no more rain for like 3 months. So those seedlings came up and they died out. Okay, I'm thinking it's a success because I overgrazed it and it worked. I had the germination. If we would have got some rain, it would have been fine. But yeah, it was sad to watch them all die, all my little babies. Okay, so just some video of the grazed fallow. So this is that little 13-acre piece. I have some pasture down below. It's all lowland grasses. So what I did was I tried to balance the ration. I would turn them into the lowland grasses, which they didn't really like, right? It's not very palatable. And then every day I would strip graze the cover crop because it's high quality feed, right? And then I would move to another piece of the lowland and then keep strip grazing. So it took me probably 2 weeks to get across this. And we ended up grazing it pretty hard. Here's just turning them out into a paddock. So the small experiment, only 50 head. You'd think they'd run out a little quicker than that, but they were pretty mellow group. Part of my service I do to my cattle customers is I quiet them down. If we move cattle every day, they go home pretty quiet. Okay, here's a little farther down. They grazed it down pretty hard. I like to leave residue, but in this situation, because we're supplementing that lowland grasses, their option is to go back and eat lowland grasses. So they graze her pretty hard. Every turnip gets pulled out first and then dropped on the ground and never grazed, and then they come back later and then clean up all the turnips.
Where do you put the water for the cows?
There's a watering site right, because I have a pasture there already. It's actually right in between the pasture and this crop. I made my own. So we strip graze in a circle from the water. In the first picture, let me back up. Right here's my water tank. Okay, so this is the lowland around this half of the water tank, and then my cover crop is out here. So this is kind of like a cell center, I'd call it. Okay. So yeah, I already saw that one. And people ask me why you put sunflowers in your crop. For the picture. No, actually, it's a very different root. It's a tap root and does a really good job of feeding our biology and stimulating the soil. So I don't know the science behind it, but it's a very valuable plant out there. I do like putting sunflowers in there. Okay, who wants some free money? Anybody? Put up your hand if you want $75,000. Who wants $150,000? Okay. I have never before in 25 years or plus of farming seen this much money thrown at sustainable or regenerative practices. Okay, we have off-calf funding, which stands for On-Farm Climate Action Fund. Okay, anybody like the carbon tax? Do you want it back? This is carbon tax dollars they're offering you. Come take it. Okay, I'll warn you right now, this money's going fast. As soon as they open, it will be gone. Okay, $75,000 per farm. In Alberta, CFGA has a program that does the grazing side of off-calf. RDAR, so CFGA is Canadian Foraging Grassland Association. RDAR is Results Driven Agriculture Research. They do all three programs of the off-calf funding. So there is grazing, cover cropping, and nitrogen management. Okay, those are the three topics that off-calf hit. CFJ only got one of them, RDAR got all three. They're run differently because two different organizations set them up, so the details are different. Depending what you want to do, which one is better or which one, what you should go through. So real quick, CFJ, the grazing side of it, they require you to have a really good grazing plan. Okay, my fault. Sorry. They asked me to help set it up, and I said, I'm not giving out this money unless you're actually going to sequester carbon. So in my opinion, putting one fence down, splitting your field in half will not get you more carbon. I'm not going to give you the money. So I want to see a good grazing plan. Okay, then we'll give you the money. And we actually have more benefits because CFJ also, I convinced them to let us put in perimeter fencing. I have never seen perimeter fencing ever allowed in a program before. We have perimeter fencing for your pastures. Okay, you're allowed. It's an eligible expense. Pipeline, water systems, wet wells. They won't do drilling of wells or digging of dugouts because SCAP actually does that already. So anything after that point, it'll do though. RDAR, CFGA covers 70%. I've never seen 70% before. It's always been like 50%. RDAR does the same thing. They cover 85%. Never heard of that before. While I'm at it, RALP, 100%. 100%. That's never happened before. So, difference for ARDAR, it covers 85%, only covers material things like the assets you buy. CFJ, 70%, covers material things, plus it will pay you 70% of your labor and equipment costs. So for you to go out there and pound post, they will pay you to do it at a 70% share. Really good deal. So if you're just buying a couple of water systems and maybe a razor grazer or something like that, it's better to go through ARDAR because they're paying 85% of all the material things. If you're doing a big fencing project, it's better to go through CFGA because they'll pay you for your tractor and your post pounder and your ATV out there driving around. Okay, so it depends what you're doing. RALP, actually, I'm really excited about RALP because it's really good for the grain farmers. They're doing two of the programs. One is intercropping and one is conversion. So if you're going to, intercropping would be adding some legumes or something to your regular cash crop. They will pay for the legume seeds, 100%. Actually, it's 115% because if you have enough acres, they give you a bonus of 15%. And they've never, I was told already that they've never not given the bonus. So it's basically they're paying 115%. The downside to RALP is you have to cash flow it longer. RALP will pay you 50% of what you get when you're approved, so you can get started. The other 50% they will pay you in 3 years if you're still doing what you said you were doing. Right? So if you did a crop conversion, put it down to perennials, they'll give you half the money up front. In 3 years, if you haven't ripped it up and put it back into canola by then, you'll get the other 50%. Okay, so they want to make sure you're doing this long term. Okay, so look into it. All of these programs also cover some type of mentorship where you can hire somebody to come out and help you do this, help you plan it, help you figure it out. So by all means, look into the mentorship. Get somebody to come out and help you plan this because some of the online stuff is a little frustrating. First time I did my application, I was cussing and swearing under my breath a little bit. So it very beneficial. And the mentorship on the CFGA one anyways, it covers 85%. So they will pay for most of it. So yeah, RALP also does grazing. It does water systems, things like that as well. And there's shelter belts. I'm just going off the top of my head here. So look into these programs. RALP opens February 1st, and the money's probably going to go pretty fast. I heard the other day that off-calf is opening sometime in April. So be ready for April. Money's going to go fast. Right? I'm planning on having all my applications in like the day it opens. Because last year it went within a few weeks and it was gone. SCAP, the government, that's where you can get water wells and dugouts and things like that dug. It also does technology advancement. I tried to get my drone through there, but they wouldn't fund it because it can spray chemicals. Like the drones are designed to spray chemicals. That's their main purpose. But in Canada, it's illegal to spray chemicals out of a drone.
Well, they're changing.
There's some that they're doing it. But that's what they teach you at the course. They tell you that right off the beginning. It's illegal to spray chemicals with a drone. But this is how you do it. So lots of people are doing it. But you can't advertise that you're doing it. I'm not spraying any chemicals. Actually, I won't spray chemicals because I don't want to be underneath this thing that's spraying chemicals all day long. I can't avoid it. Like when I'm done a day of spreading seed, I'm covered in seed dust. So I do not want to spray any chemicals. But they wouldn't cover it because it could spray chemicals and that's not allowed. They'll do other types of drones through there, but not my seeding drone. So, and Alice is county specific. So some of your counties might not have it, but it's another funding program that can do fencing, riparian area management, shelter belts, things like that. So look into any one of these, all of them. Like I said, $75,000 is off calf. Now you can't get 75 from both of these. It's a total. They actually communicate with each other. RALP is 150,000. SCAP, I'm not sure what the cap is on that, but these are, yeah, look into those. I don't know too much about those. Any comments, questions? Anybody not want free money? Okay, well, that's the end of my show. We got any questions? Yes.
Yeah, you talked about when you're doing the grazing there, the lowland, how the cattle are going back. Have you ever done anything to improve lowland to make it a more palatable grazing area?
Not really, just graze it. Like if my very first piece of land that I took on up here, it was basically a creek running through it. Picture a creek running right through the middle of it. We got lowland in there. The majority of the whole quarter was lowland, and then there's hills on both ends. When I first took that over, they had one fence that ran halfway out the lowland and then 4-strand barbed wire, and then just stopped. I'm like, looking at this going, what the heck? Why would they, where did this go? Where's the rest of the fence? It's missing. They said they just put it out far enough, the cattle never wanted to go around it. They never went to the back because they didn't want to go around it. It was soft ground or whatever. I'm like, really? They never went around? Nope. So what was happening was they were preferring to stay up on the highland where all the good palatable stuff is. So what I did was I finished the fence, broke it up into, I think, 19 pieces, did my rotational grazing. Now I'm forcing them to graze it down. When I come back the next time, it's a better, it's tasty. They don't mind it. So I got 250% more animal days out of that piece of land when I started rotationally, because there was so much of that lowland that they never touched and it just went mature. So knock it down, graze it, let it come back up. I'm sure my species composition is better now, and overall the palatability is much higher. So, yes. Oh, sorry.
A question: have you ever used the legume mix that you put in with your minerals and you let the cows?
Do I put legumes in my minerals? For years I did. Didn't see a lot of results. The results are very, very slow. I can get a lot faster results by broadcasting it out there and getting them out there. Not saying it doesn't work. I had a fella years ago, he said that, my dad always put clovers in the mineral, and I thought it was a waste of time. So when I took over the ranch, I stopped doing it. And 10 years later, I realized I got no clovers left in my fields. So it's a long term. It does work. Very cheap to do it, but slow to see results. That frost seeding has been my most successful.
Can you talk about native and if it's worth it? Like native, like specifically winter fat, like I live in southern Alberta, winter fat, skeleton meat, like.
Okay, my native is bush, right? So I'm different now. My parents' land, we still got like 40 acres of prairie wool, original prairie wool sitting there that he doesn't even graze anymore. Native needs more rest period. If you can get some native species to go in there, like they're really promoting the conversion. They give you, RALP gives you more money if you're converting it to a native species than to tame species.
But is it worth it for biomass forage and recovery? Is it worth sort of trying to protect those? Like, are you going to get better benefits by having
native
winter fat or like something really specific like that it's so much?
Species don't mean much to me. They go over my head because to me, it's the composition and how are my cows doing. Like I said, I probably can't help you much. I don't have my native. Like when the University of Alberta came out to that piece that they did the study on, they were so excited. Oh, look at all the native species. I'm like, native would be trees, right? Right? Like this is not really native to here. So we've developed native there, but as long as my forage looks good and they're growing and my cattle are doing well, I'm happy. I'm not a big expert on species. I'm not a weed nerd. I'm not a plant nerd. So no, I don't know if I can help you with that. Different species. So.
What recommendations would you have for healing overgrazed pastures that haven't been cropland prior? And does soil type play into that?
What's out there? Rest is a big part of it. Right? We need to get that rest. Is it a bunch of woody species or is it a bunch of weeds? We talked about the carbon-nitrogen ratio. The wrong one. We talked about the fungal to bacterial ratio. Right? If it's a bunch of woody species, you've got a very fungal soil, you want to get it back to 1-to-1. If it's a bunch of weeds out there, you want to get it back to 1-to-1, we need to move it the other way.
Would that be better off like doing the bale grazing or broadcasting the specific types of seed?
Bale grazing is my only magic bullet I've ever found. Right? There's a lot of magic bullets that people, they say they're out there. That's the only one that instantly heals my land. Right? I haven't found anything else. Everything else is slower. So in my experiment with my bale grazing, one side of the fence and the other side, what I did in 1 year, it took me 10 years with my grazing to get to the same point, right? Just by being nice to it. So it's not saying that you can just do it with grazing. You might need to stimulate it, speed it up somehow.
Maybe start with
But-
bale grazing and then work to broadcasting thereafter.
The problem with bale grazing is you can't cover very much land, right? I got 3,500 acres. I can only cover 35 in a winter. Okay, so how am I going to manage all the rest of it to improve it as well? Good grazing management, give it some rest, give good graze periods. Add some carbon when you can, right? I've bought old crappy straw bales off the neighbor that he was going to burn. He basically just loaded them up for me. I didn't really buy them. Brought them over and dumped them out on the hills, right? I'm adding carbon there, fixing the water cycle. Most common way for me is just to defer graze, to try and heal a piece of land, let it go, right? Let's say I have 30 paddocks. I'm on a decent year, we get some decent rainfall. I'm only going to graze 28. I'm going to pick the worst 2 and say I'm not even going to touch those, and let them go to seed, let them mature, let all that material go down and be trash, right? Leave it on the ground. Next year, do the same thing, pick a different 2. Graze 28 paddocks. Okay. When the drought hits, not only is my land in better shape because I've left all that residue, but when the drought hits, now I have 30 paddocks to graze, right? I have more land to graze on the. So we look at it as a bank account, right? We make deposits into that land every year, and if we have to on a drought year, we can take that withdrawal out. Okay, but if you haven't made any deposits, you can't take the withdrawal. Okay. One more question. I'm out of time. Not from you. We don't want him.
I have a property that it's been resting for probably 10 years.
Okay. Yeah.
And so I want to make sure that going forward, we're keeping it, that it's producing and everything. And we only have like 6 cattle right now, but we're adding to it. So to keep them going, to stay healthy, I guess, would I do the bale grazing and just rotate each year and then try and add the cover crops or whatever to where I bale grazed before?
It's already a pasture?
Yeah, it's already pasture.
Okay. It's okay. I'm going to give you a 2-day grazing school in a minute, because that's what you're asking for. Bale grazing is just one tool. It's not going to change your whole farm, because you can only get a little piece of it. Okay. That being said, I love bale grazing, but you got to manage the whole piece. Go to the CFGA website. Go to programs, and hit advanced grazing systems. Okay. I just built a 6 to 8 hour grazing school online that you guys can access for free. Okay. Yeah, it's free. You guys can go there, and it's all the basic grazing concepts, principles. We talk about winter grazing. We talk about budgeting, economics. Yeah, it's about 6 to 8 hours of time. Okay, there we go. And last question, we're done. Canadian Forage and Grassland Association, so CFGA. Go to programs at the top. Tab will come down, it'll say advanced grazing systems, and then I think you have to hit advanced grazing systems again, because then there's another choice, and then you can sign up for the school, and it's free. Okay, I'm getting kicked off here.